So good to see everybody. Good morning, Tiffany. Morning, Brenda. Good morning, James. It's so good to see you guys, to be able to spend some time together praying and just talking about our study of Esther, talking about some different things that are going on in amongst the church. It is just such an interesting time because I feel like we're in this really weird dichotomy where on the surface it appears that it's almost like we live in two different worlds, meaning like there's this hope. It kind of seems like this hope that things are maybe getting a little bit returning to normal, that businesses are opening up, that coffee shops, restaurants, that baseball is back this past week, which is weird to watch games with piped in noise. But then at the same time, there's weird stuff going on, right? Like, for instance, if you're into sports at all, like last night, the Marlins home opener was shut down because 8 players and 2 coaches tested positive, and so they had to shut it down. And then there's this governmental uncertainty. And then if you're watching the color dial, we keep getting closer and closer to red, whereas just a month ago, we were almost in the green. And so just kind of weird things happening, right? And so it's kind of this like, man, is it that we're living in two different worlds? And then I think about Esther and where we're at in chapter 7 this morning and reading that, and it's almost like you have these two different worlds taking place. You have the world of Haman, where he has come up with this diabolical plan consumed with kind of hatred and envy and frustration in his heart to destroy the Jews, and everything seems headed that way, to the point that it says the Jews are in despair. It says that Mordecai has torn his clothes and is wearing sackcloth and ashes, that Esther is afraid for her life as she goes into the presence of the king. And yet the Lord seems to be orchestrating things in this other world that he seems to be working in, where he's orchestrated for Esther, for Mordecai to be in the right places at the right time to hear the things that he's hearing about the king being threatened, about Haman's plan. And in that, the king finds out, ends up honoring Mordecai, forcing Haman to honor Mordecai, that the queen is invited into the king's presence, that Esther begins to plan this banquet, that she invites both the king and Haman to it. And then in chapter 7, this amazing thing happens where the king, for the 3rd time, requests, Esther, what can I do for you? I'll give you up to half my kingdom, showing the king's generosity. And Esther lays out for him, well, I live in fear, and so do my people. And we're in this season where it's really easy to live in fear, and to find that even collectively, like one of the things that I'm nervous about on Sunday morning is that we would be distracted from our dependence, reliance, and experience of knowing God's grace and mercy by masks, or by worship being conducted in a different way musically, or different things like that. But instead, in the midst of all of this, the king doesn't become angry at Esther, but ends up with the execution of Haman. And chapter 7 ends with Haman being hung on the gallows, executed on the same gallows that he intended for Mordecai. I think about what that would have felt like to place myself, because it's a real story. The Bible's a real story with real pain, with real hurt, with real sin, but with real people finding a real God. And in that, I think about what God must have been thinking in this other true world that's all around us, that God is at work orchestrating things that if he told us, it says in Habakkuk, we wouldn't understand. Then in Isaiah, his ways are higher than our ways, that it tells us that we continue to press into the immeasurable riches of his glory and grace in Ephesians. And so I wonder this morning how God is at work in what seems to maybe be like, to some of us, the worst. Whether it's a job that we lose, whether it's a home that we're not sure if we can continue affording, whether or not it's a family frustration, whether or not it's the loss of a relationship. But yet, I think of Charles Spurgeon saying, when I can't trust or can't see the hand of God, I'm going to trust the heart of God. And so it's actually at times like this when we think about David saying in Psalm 23, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear, for your rod and your staff, they comfort me. It's in the depths that David comes to know the genuine love and grace of God. It's in the caves as he runs from Saul. It's in the persecution of his enemies. It's in those moments that's when David knows God's real. And so maybe it's during this time that instead of proclaiming God's here to judge, maybe he is. One thing I know is that God's here and that his presence is felt more fully. And so this morning I was reading, coinciding with Esther in Psalm 139. It talks about how David says, I awake and you are still with me. So friend, do you know that this morning God's still with you? He's still with us. He's still moving. He's still working. So we're excited. We're excited to see him continue to work and continuing to open up our church in new ways, to hopefully very soon we can begin singing, even if that's through masks, that our kids ministry, our J247 middle school and our high school ministry opens on the 16th. And here's what I would call you to consider is Allie, Lucas, and Sam are unbelievable. Their team of volunteers and helpers that they have all around them, from Susan to Susan Forbish to Susan Lamb to Michelle to Bethany to Mike. It doesn't end. And in all of that, they still need us. They need volunteers, and especially in this season where we're going to need actually an amped up ability to make sure that our students are loved and kept safe so they can go to school, so they can play sports, so they can have graduations and celebrations. Would you consider praying about joining our team? And if you're interested, if you'd send an email either to just our general info email that you can find on the website, or to Allie or Lucas specifically, we would love to see you, especially in our children's ministry on Sunday mornings, and leading a small group of our students maybe on Wednesday nights in your driveway. But just praying, how is God maybe calling you in this season to partner with us in investing in the lives of these little ones? And so God, I pray very, very, very overwhelmingly and confess that it is easy, Lord, when I take my eyes off of you and your cross, to become overwhelmed and anxious, even scared, God. And God, I'm not really necessarily scared of getting sick. I'm just scared of change. I'm scared of what's not going to be the same. I am so prone to look at the past through rose-colored glasses, God. But Father, I pray that you give me those, not rose-colored, but crimson-colored glasses to see the present and to trust you for the future. God, I know you're at work in my kids' lives and my family's lives. I know that you're at work in our church's life and our extended family. God, I pray and ask that you help us to be present in the lives of others as you work and prick and move in their hearts, as you convict, as you encourage, as you uplift. God, I want to pray for our kiddos during this time as they get ready not only to go back to school in this bizarre and weirdo season, God, but I want to pray for just their ability to see you, to feel you, to trust you. God, I thank you that kids are so relentless, that you've made them so determined. And so, Father, I pray that we would love and serve them well, and that we would hear your words, let the little children come to me, and God, that we would bring them to you. And so, God, we trust that you're in work in ways that we can't understand. We cry out like Joseph that what the enemy intends for evil, you intend for good, that we believe like Paul that this is nothing compared to the glory that will be revealed, that this is a momentary blip on the radar compared with all eternity with you. So, God, we love you. We thank you for loving us. It's in your son's name I pray. Amen. Hey, be praying for me. I'm praying for you. Love you guys so much.